Peace and wholeness vibes. Understand? Peace and wholeness vibes. We need that, though. We need peace and wholeness vibes. I know. The whole Namaste thing sounds, probably sounds a little cheesy now because it's been oversaturated. But still, use it anyway. You still need it. You still need it. Trust. It worked like magic. It's magic. It's magic. Even if you ain't feeling it, just conjure it up. Peace and wholesome vibes. It don't mean you gotta be soft. Doesn't mean you have to be in denial about how you really feel about stuff either. Because that's not what Namaste is. It means know yourself. Knowing yourself is not a 24-hour smiling process, I'm guessing. I mean, it's not for me. It don't mean that there's times when I'm not happy. That's not what I'm saying. But if you like thinking, if you deep in thought, a lot of times you got a frown on your face, not because you in distress over the thinking process. Although if we get dumbed down enough as a society, though, it will be like that, where just to think is going to put us under a lot of duress. But as it pertains to this, the contemplative nature of a more serious and austere and grave disposition, it's not always about being stuck up or high-minded. It's not that. Sometimes we can misjudge people like that, and we just write them off as being staunch or maybe pious when it wasn't warranted. They didn't come across as overly religious. They might have just been more reserved than the average person. So we started drawing conclusions. But one of the conclusions, it can be drawn in error, though, because that person might just be a more serious person. You got hot and cold. You can't just have hot, warm people. You got to have that coldness too. Apply it in the right context. You don't have to be cold in terms of dealing with others as to be a push away, but you're not going to be so cozy with strangers and unguarded and vulnerable either, to where you're a push over. You don't want to push people away. You don't want to be a pushover either. That's balance. That's peace and wholesome vibes. That's Namaste. That's knowing yourself. Knowing what you're going to tolerate, what you don't tolerate, knowing what pushes your buttons, and knowing how to hide the remote. When you're around people that want to press your buttons, you understand. Peace and wholesome vibes. And yes, peace and wholesome vibes does get a bad rap because of some elements and the way some sectors move with this. And Namaste turned into a whole real world 1998. Real world 1995, 1996. It turned into reality TV. We saw it coming, everybody, in the 90s. You remember what it was. Real world was the beginning of reality TV. And reality TV was the beginning of the social media age. It was the beginning. It was to put us in a position where, okay, one of the two things is true. Either the average man is under the thickest veil of illusion ever regarding his or her access to stardom, or the playing field is really just that level. And with the way technology is going, I'm willing to lean more towards the latter. That is more of an even playing field. There's enough technology and know-it-all now to do your whole bidding. If you are somebody who wants to record music, but then you're good at other stuff too, if you cash in and bet on yourself on those other things, you know what you just did? You signed yourself to your own 360 deal. You are getting a piece out of everything that you touch. You translate this into a self-made entrepreneurial styled approach where you're not signing a contract and you're going all the way independent. You look at what's being done in the 360 deal and you take it upon yourself to do all of that. Is it going to sound like a lot of work? Yes. Because is it a lot of work? Yes. The answer to both of those questions is yes. Don't be deceived. There's no way around hard work. You could do it in a smarter way, but there's no way around good hard work. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to grind. Nobody's blowing up without doing 500 free features or whatever. Or nobody's blowing up without putting in that heavy work. Look, I remember back in the day before Lil Wayne was Wheezy. I seen it coming. I like, look, man, I'm in high school reading through the Source magazine. Like, look, if the big timers come out one more time, your cash money, they would. I promise you, they were dropping an album a month for like the entire 1990s. Big timers. It was just, even if they weren't recording anything, just the fact that they had new album covers every month for almost every artist on their team, I was inspired. And the southern sound of music wasn't hitting the same like it is now. Everybody wasn't bouncing yet. Nobody was really bouncing yet. In the South was more about soul. It was dominated by more of a Dungeon Family sound at that time. So other than that boom bap, stomp the concrete skyscraper project buildings, you were gonna get an ode to the 70s and 80s. This is what you were gonna get in the sampling and in the sounds, right? And in the sampling. This is what you would get. Yes, Dr. Dre and them went in on the Chronic. Yes, they did. When you listen to that album, everybody was rhyming their heart out. Even if nobody knew what they was going to do. Just the raw effort alone is enough for the success of what that album was. But the elephant in the room is that it's Parliament Funkadelic that is the original music behind that. Dre is an awesome producer. He's one of the best producers, not just of our time, but of all time. Absolutely. That's without question. That's without question. But it was still Parliament Funkadelic. And George Clinton was still the mothership, the motherboard, the mother brain, the mother child to that whole West Coast sound. So that was an ode to the 70s. And at the same time, you had people moving and grooving in the South too. Like I said, with the Dungeon Family, that Dungeon Family sound, they were doing their thing too. And I remember, like, the way Southern music used to sound versus how it sounds now, it's cool. But the bounce is everywhere, so you don't know who's coming from where. You just have to pay attention to the nuance and really keep your eye on the slang, because the bounce is gonna have now anyway. The same tempo was in the West Coast, same tempo in the Midwest, same tempo in the South. You don't know if they're coming from Chicago, New York, LA, Atlanta. You don't know where they're coming from no more. Because we're under a whole different music scheme, and it's going to take probably video after video after video for me to really hammer home the change. That just because there's a rise in the machines, Terminator, that you don't have to fall. You can rise with the machines. How about that? The machines still need somebody to operate them. They can talk all the sentient talk that they want, but the commands are still got to come from a man. Because man will always be in demand. Look, those machines ain't going to be happy without us. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But back to the music, though. So the sound is everywhere. Yeah, everybody bouncing, but they wasn't bouncing yet. Like old school R&B, like it's like Isley Brothers sound coming out of the South before everything got bounced up. And the bounce thing is cool too, because just in case we go through a severe depopulation for any reason, for reasons that I won't even mention on here in terms of possibilities, we need some moving and grooving music, man. And these triplets, not for nothing, but they're Kundalini inducing. You don't have to get with the words, get with the message. You don't even have to really get with what they rapping about. But you gonna be saying what they saying. But the beat go hard. And guess what? The beat ain't the only thing going hard. They going hard too. They rapping, man. They rapping. I don't care if you can't understand it, they rapping. It take enough just to make them sound effects. It take enough just to do them ad-libs. Look, shout out to the new generation, man. They going in, man. They going in. It's because there's a splitting image. For me to be, I'll be 41 next month. I'll be 41. So for me to deny and hate on anybody that's 21 right now rapping the way they rapping, that's like me going back in time and basically dogging out my own history of how I started. Yeah, it wasn't, hip hop didn't have that kind of sound at that time. We was, like I just went over that, we was dominated in the Northeast. We had that, you know, it was Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, Nas, that kind of thing. And you know, cats had Jersey Flow, you had Def Squad, it was real different, but it was so diverse at the same time. That's one thing I really do miss about the 90s, and this is why I'm putting in my argument of saying that the 90s was the most golden age of hip-hop, because it was the most successfully diverse that we have ever seen, in my personal opinion. Everybody wasn't at the top. I know everybody didn't go platinum. I get it. But man, everybody went gold though. Everybody went gold. I mean, you can be homie from up the block. You gonna sell 300,000 just for being brave enough to go into the studio. If you finish the album, you gonna sell 200,000 just for finishing the album. You remember them CDs and tapes? We was getting independent money at that time. At that time, people was just happy to see that you was doing something. I promise you, I was in high school selling cassette tapes for like $5 with rhymes on them. I promise you I was. And they was waiting too, like, yo, man, I got more money after the weekend is up, so when we get back to school, man, if you got another copy, I want in. I was going to Radio Shack, man, buying them cassettes and going in. So for me to diss these cats now would be like me going back in that time and dissing. You know, knowing that instead of the sound of the Future, it was like Ghostface. It's like Raekwon. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like meth. For me to erase what these kids is feeling now, it's for me to erase what I was feeling then. And I can't do that. I can't go on like that. So that's really what it come down to. Stay open. And I'm saying this because you could make that positivity contagious. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. What Stevie Wonder said, I go sailing. What did he say on the rivers of my mind? You'll be surprised what you find. Something like that. Something like that. I forget how that go. I think that's the Jungle Fever soundtrack. But either way, love is love. Is Super T Sigma with Sigma Programming. I thank you for your time and attention. You already know, reaching is teaching. In the meantime, continue to vibrate high and stay balanced. Peace.